The ship drifted silently through the dark void of space, a lone sentinel in a universe filled with stars and uncharted mysteries. Captain Maxine Hollis stared out at the stars, her eyes scanning the black expanse with practiced ease. She had seen many things in her career as a deep space explorer: alien ruins, strange worlds, and even remnants of civilizations far older than humanity. But nothing quite like this. The object loomed ahead, its massive structure slowly taking shape in the starlight. It was a ring, impossibly large, with swirling metal and stone wrapped around an unknown central core. The image of it, spanning across their view screen, was so surreal it felt like something out of a long-forgotten myth, the kind of ancient alien technology that humanity had only heard about in stories. Maxine's heart quickened as she leaned forward, her fingers brushing against the controls. "What are we looking at, Lieutenant?" Lieutenant Jaden Moss, her communications officer, tapped at his console and stared at the incoming data, a puzzled expression furrowing his brow. "I'm running every scan I can, Captain. It's not like anything we've encountered before. The metals, the energy signature, it's all anomalous. No ship or structure we've ever cataloged matches this profile." Maxine's brow furrowed. "Then what is it?" Moss didn't answer right away. He was still reading through the data, his eyes narrowing as he scrolled through endless streams of information. The thing they had found had been buried in the farthest reaches of the galaxy, hidden in a system that was supposed to be a dead zone. A place where no one had ever ventured. "We've got a reading, Captain," Moss said after a moment, his voice tight. "It's older than anything we've seen. A relic from a civilization far beyond even the ancients." Maxine leaned back in her chair, her thoughts swirling. Humanity had come a long way since the first expeditions into space, since the discovery of the mysterious ruins left behind by the long-extinct alien species known only as the Ancients. They had learned much from those artifacts, power sources, propulsion technology, and even relics that hinted at some of the mysteries of the universe. But this was different. Far different. "Is it possible?" Maxine murmured to herself. "Could the Ancients have left this behind?" "Not the Ancients," Moss said quietly, his voice betraying a sense of awe. "This is something far older, Captain. The structure, it's massive, far more advanced than anything the Ancients left behind." Maxine studied the object on the screen, a nagging sense of familiarity tugging at her. The ring, the central core, the strange markings etched across the surface, it was almost as if it were calling out to her. But calling for what? A sudden jolt sent a ripple through the ship, followed by an alarm blaring in the background. The sound of it snapped Maxine to attention. She instinctively grabbed the armrest of her chair as the ship's systems flickered. "Captain, we've just entered a gravitational anomaly," Moss shouted. "It's pulling us in." The ship lurched again, this time with more force. Maxine's grip tightened. The object was more than just an ancient structure, it was a force in itself, seemingly alive with power. Something was happening. And she had no idea what that something was. "Report," Maxine barked. "We're being pulled toward the ring," Moss said, his voice strained. "The gravitational field is intensifying. Our engines are being drained. We can't fight it. We're going in." Maxine slammed her hand onto the control panel, trying to stabilize the ship's systems. But it was futile. The pull of the ring, its gravitational field, was too strong. The ship was being dragged in, like a moth to a flame. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape. "Brace for impact," she yelled, her voice firm despite the growing panic in the air. The crew scrambled to secure themselves as the ship plunged toward the ring, the vast structure growing ever larger on the view screen. Maxine's heart raced. There was no telling what lay on the other side of this mysterious relic. No one had ever encountered anything like it before. And now, it seemed like they were about to be the first humans to set foot inside. The ship was swallowed by the gravitational field, pulled into the massive ring's core. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. The sound of the ship's systems whined in protest, the power being drained as they entered the unknown. The lights flickered and went out, casting the crew into total blackness. Then, with a sudden jolt, the ship slammed into something solid, sending a wave of force through the hull. "Status report," Maxine shouted, her voice cutting through the disorienting silence. "We've landed," Moss said, his voice shaking slightly. "I think we're inside something. I'm not sure how we're still in one piece." Maxine rubbed her eyes, trying to clear the disorientation. What the hell just happened? Before anyone could respond, the ship's lights flickered back on, bathing the bridge in a cold, eerie glow. The ship had indeed landed, but it wasn't like any landing she'd ever experienced. The walls around them were no longer metallic. Instead, they were smooth, polished stone, with intricate carvings and symbols woven throughout. The entire structure seemed to pulse with a strange energy. Maxine's breath caught in her throat. "What is this place?" she whispered. "It's not natural," Moss replied, his voice tinged with awe. "This is no ordinary structure. It's more like a temple, or a machine. A living thing. It's..." "Captain," said Dr. Riya Patel, the ship's lead archaeologist, cutting him off. "I think I know what this is. Or, at least, I think I know what it was." Maxine turned sharply toward Dr. Patel, her brow furrowed. "Go on." Dr. Patel stood from her station, her face pale but her eyes wide with excitement. "This is no ordinary ancient relic. This is a weapon." The silence that followed was deafening. "We've heard stories," Patel continued, "about ancient species, far older than even the ancients, who built things like this, massive constructs that could control space itself. Not just weapons in the traditional sense, but devices that could alter the very fabric of reality. I think this ring was one of them. A weapon of unimaginable power." Maxine's pulse quickened. A weapon. A weapon capable of manipulating space, of creating anomalies like the one they had just passed through. This wasn't just a relic, this was a key to something far beyond their understanding. But it was here. They had found it. And they had no idea what kind of dangers lay within. "Riya, are you saying this thing could..." Maxine stopped herself, trying to collect her thoughts. "I'm saying we're standing in the center of an ancient weapon, Captain," Dr. Patel replied, her voice tense. "And if we don't figure out what it is and how it works..." A sudden, sharp rumble cut her off, shaking the entire ship. The ground beneath them trembled, and the ship's lights flickered once again. It wasn't just a tremor. It was something far worse. The ship was shaking, as if something deep within the structure was awakening. Maxine's eyes widened. "Get to the escape pods," she ordered immediately. "Move. Now." But as she tried to move toward the door, the ship's systems suddenly locked down. The control panels buzzed with static, and a loud mechanical grinding noise echoed from deep within the ship. "Not so fast, Captain," a cold voice said through the ship's comms system, making Maxine freeze in place. It wasn't one of her crew members. It wasn't anyone from their ship. The voice was alien, unfamiliar, and full of ancient power. "We've been waiting for you." The voice echoed in the cramped confines of the ship, its cold, mechanical tone seeping into every corner of the hull. Maxine froze, her blood turning to ice. She wasn't sure whether it was the voice itself or the realization that it came from something alive, something ancient, that rattled her so deeply. The voice wasn't just a recording. It was alive, responding to them. "We've been waiting for you," it repeated, its words vibrating through the ship's systems, almost as if the walls themselves were speaking. The lights flickered ominously. Then, a strange hum filled the air, a low, constant vibration that made Maxine's teeth ache. Her heart was pounding in her chest as she quickly scanned the bridge. The crew's faces mirrored her shock, but they were also quick to move. Moss was already trying to access the communications panel, but the screen blinked in static. Dr. Patel was tense, her eyes darting around the room, scanning for anything that might give them a clue as to what was happening. Maxine's mind raced. They had been pulled into this place by the gravitational anomaly. They had no idea what kind of trap they'd just entered. Could it be sentient? Could this ancient structure be aware of them? And what did the voice mean by waiting? Captain. Moss's voice cut through her thoughts. I can't get a response from the external comms. The ship's systems are being overridden, something's blocking access. We've lost control of the ship's controls. Maxine's stomach dropped. They were stuck, no longer in command of their own vessel. Whatever force had activated the ring was now controlling the situation. We need to figure out what we're dealing with here, Maxine said, trying to keep her voice calm. Dr. Patel, do you know what this structure might be? Why it's waiting for us? Patel's face was pale, but her voice was steady. It's possible that the structure is an artifact of an ancient species, Captain. A species so advanced that they may have mastered not only space travel but time and space itself. The structures we've encountered before, those left by the ancients, were remnants of a civilization that had collapsed. But this feels different. I think this ring might still be functional, still active in some way. Maxine turned toward Patel, her expression hardening. But why us? Why now? I don't know, Patel said, looking down at her datapad. There's something I've been reading about, rumors, really, that ancient civilizations often left behind mechanisms for testing those who came after them. Not just anyone could gain access to their technologies. And when they did, it wasn't always voluntary. Sometimes, these ancient species would provoke or manipulate visitors. They might see us as worthy of some kind of trial. Or perhaps we're part of some bigger experiment. Maxine interrupted, a dark realization dawning. Patel hesitated, then nodded slowly. Yes. That seems likely. This ring, it's not just a weapon. It could be a test, a way for them to see how we react, how we solve problems. If we're worthy of the knowledge it holds. Maxine stared at the screen, the vast alien ring stretching out before them. The idea of being tested, manipulated, was unsettling, but it was the only explanation that made sense. She gritted her teeth, steeling herself for whatever would come next. A new rumble passed through the ship. The vibration had intensified, and now there was a strange whirring sound, a sound that seemed to come from deep within the structure. The hum grew louder, and the walls trembled. Then, the voice returned. You are here because you are worthy. But are you worthy enough? The words weren't just spoken, they invaded their minds, a direct communication that bypassed the comm systems entirely, flooding their consciousness. Maxine's grip tightened around the armrest of her chair, her muscles straining. The others looked similarly uncomfortable, as if they could hear the voice, feel it reverberating through their very thoughts. What does it want from us? Moss muttered, his voice tight with fear. Maxine shook her head. I don't know, but we need to find out. Whatever it is, it's not going to let us leave until we do. Captain, the ship's engines are still offline, Moss said, his fingers flying over the panel, trying to get any response. We can't escape. We don't want to escape, Maxine said, her voice hardening. Not yet. We need answers. A sudden realization hit her. Dr. Patel, can you access the ring? Can you figure out what it is or how to stop this? Patel's brow furrowed, and she glanced toward the viewing port, where the swirling mass of the ring was visible in all its alien grandeur. She swallowed hard, her breath quickening. I don't know. But if there's a way to disengage the ship's lock, it's probably in the heart of the structure. We'll need to get there. Maxine turned to Moss. Get us there. Moss's fingers flew over the navigation console, but the ship's systems were still locked down. The force within the ring seemed to be fighting them at every turn. I can't, Captain. The ring's gravitational field is interfering with our systems. I'm not getting a clean path. Maxine's frustration mounted. But then she remembered the one thing that humanity had always excelled at, adaptability. They had faced unthinkable challenges before, and they had survived. She wouldn't let this be their end. Okay, Maxine said, her voice calm now. We'll do this the old-fashioned way. We'll go manually. Everyone froze at her words. Patel raised an eyebrow. Manually? But the ship's systems are compromised. You can't just. I know exactly what I'm doing, Maxine said, cutting her off. We've got to get to the heart of this structure, and the only way to do that is to take the ship to the closest entry point. We'll exit, find the access point, and take it from there. Moss's eyes widened. Are you seriously suggesting we leave the ship? In this place? Maxine nodded firmly. Yes. We're not waiting around for whatever happens next. The ring wants us to prove ourselves, to face whatever test it has set. If we want to get out of here, we'll have to play by its rules. Patel looked to Maxine, then to the others, her gaze filled with both awe and apprehension. Are you sure? The place, it's alive, Captain. We could be walking into something that's far beyond our understanding. A place like this, if it's not destroyed, it could be dangerous. Maxine exhaled slowly. I know. But if we sit around and do nothing, we'll never get out of here. We have to go. There was a tense moment of silence. Maxine could see the hesitation in the eyes of her crew, but she could also see the spark of determination in them. They were human. And humans, even in the face of the unknown, had always found a way to push forward. Without another word, Maxine stood and moved toward the airlock, where the door hissed open to reveal the cold, unknown expanse beyond. Get your suits on, she ordered. We're going in. The crew, though clearly nervous, moved quickly to prepare. In moments, they were suited up and ready to leave the safety of the ship behind. As Maxine sealed her helmet, she glanced at Dr. Patel, who was still looking at the massive ring, her brow furrowed in deep thought. Maxine said, her voice muffled by her helmet. This is our chance. Let's make it count. Dr. Patel hesitated, but then nodded. Yes. Let's see what's inside. And with that, they made their way toward the ring. They were no longer just visitors, they were participants in whatever game the ancient force had set before them. The airlock hissed open, and the cold vacuum of space greeted them. Maxine felt a sharp breath freeze in her chest as she stepped forward, her boots making a soft, metallic clang as they met the surface. The weight of her suit was strangely comforting, its systems whirring softly as it adjusted to the alien atmosphere. She looked up at the swirling, magnificent structure that loomed before them, a massive ring, its surface alive with faint energy pulses. It pulsed and shimmered, as though it were breathing, and with every breath, Maxine felt a tremor deep inside her bones. As her crew followed her out of the ship, the airlock door closed behind them, and the ship disappeared into the distance. Maxine glanced around the alien landscape, taking in their surroundings. They stood on an uneven ground made of dark, metallic slabs, each one etched with symbols that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. The architecture was breathtaking in its complexity, an ancient design with unfamiliar geometric shapes and curves that stretched into the distance. It felt like they had stepped into the belly of some cosmic creature. Stay alert, Maxine ordered, her voice calm but firm. She could hear the sounds of their boots crunching against the uneven surface as they moved forward, all of them moving with careful precision, unsure of what they might encounter next. Moss was scanning the surroundings with his handheld device, his eyes flicking back and forth between the device and the alien environment. I'm not picking up any hostile life signs, Captain, he said, his voice a little shaky. But I'm not getting anything normal either. The energy here is unpredictable. We're walking through something that doesn't play by our rules, Maxine said, trying to keep her focus. But we have to keep moving. We don't have a choice. The longer we stay in one place, the more we risk drawing attention. Dr. Patel stood back for a moment, squinting at the symbols that adorned the ground and the walls. These symbols, this design. It's like a map. A chart. A guide. But to what? Maxine shook her head, taking a few steps forward. We'll find out soon enough. She gestured ahead, where a colossal structure loomed in the distance. It appeared to be the heart of the ring, the place they had to reach if they were to gain any answers. The group moved forward, passing through passages lined with more of the shifting symbols. It was quiet except for the sound of their breathing and the occasional whir of equipment. There were no signs of life, no creatures, no other beings. Just this immense, silent structure that felt like a dead monument, as though it had been waiting for them, dormant, until now. As they approached the heart of the ring, the structure seemed to change in subtle ways, its edges becoming sharper, its lines more defined. The air itself felt heavier, almost as if the space was compressing, drawing them deeper into something that was beyond their understanding. Maxine felt a growing unease, but she pushed it down. They were close. Then, suddenly, the floor beneath their feet vibrated. The ground trembled, causing the group to pause in place. A strange low hum filled the air, emanating from deep within the structure, and then a harsh crackling sound rang out, filling the silence. Maxine's pulse quickened. "Brace yourselves," Maxine muttered, looking around. Without warning, the walls around them began to shift, the stone-like surface splitting open with loud, grinding sounds. Metal panels slid into place, revealing dark, winding corridors leading deeper into the ring. It was as though the entire structure was coming to life, a living, breathing entity revealing its insides, responding to their presence. "Move!" Maxine barked, her voice sharp. The crew didn't need any further instruction. They broke into a run, heading toward the nearest opening. Maxine could hear the heavy thudding of their boots, the sound echoing in the cavernous space. As they ran, the ground beneath them started to tremble again. The entire structure seemed to shake with power, as if responding to their movement. The walls ahead of them opened wider, giving way to a massive chamber that glowed with an eerie, greenish light. Inside, they found something that almost stopped Maxine in her tracks. In the center of the chamber stood a massive, alien control panel, its surface covered with symbols that were now illuminated, burning with an unnatural, almost sentient light. The air crackled with energy, the ground beneath them humming in rhythm with the glowing symbols. It was a nexus of power, a source of ancient, untold energy. And it was waiting for them. "The heart of the ring," Dr. Patel whispered, awestruck. Maxine was drawn to it, her boots carrying her forward as if some force, was pulling her to it. The others followed reluctantly, their hesitation palpable. The entire room seemed alive, the walls and floors vibrating with a pulsating energy, and the control panel was glowing with strange light that seemed to beckon them. "Are we sure about this?" Moss asked, his voice trembling slightly. "I mean, this is really alien tech. How do we even begin to understand it?" Maxine reached the console and stared down at the glowing symbols. Her fingers hovered over it, as though she could feel the power surging beneath the surface. For a brief moment, she hesitated. This was uncharted territory, dangerous territory. They had no idea what this was, what it might do. But she could also sense something deeper, something almost ancient, calling to them. "We have no choice," Maxine said firmly. "This is the key to everything. It's why we're here." She reached down and pressed one of the symbols, and for a split second, nothing happened. Then, the chamber pulsed with a sudden burst of energy. The walls cracked, and the air seemed to thicken with static. A loud, deep hum echoed around them, rising to an almost deafening crescendo. The symbols on the panel lit up in a dazzling array of colors, and Maxine felt her skin tingle as though the very atoms around them were alive. Suddenly, a low voice, the voice, rang out again, and this time, it was unmistakably clear. It was as though it wasn't coming from the speakers, but from inside their minds. "You have activated the core. But do you understand what you have done?" Maxine's pulse raced. "What do you want from us?" she demanded, her voice strained but firm. The voice laughed, if it could be called laughter. It was cold, emotionless, and yet there was something eerily familiar about it. "You are worthy. But you must prove it." Before she could respond, the floor beneath them gave way. Maxine barely had time to react as the ground beneath her crumbled. The crew was scattered, each of them falling into darkness, the light from the control panel receding above them as they plummeted downward. The sensation of freefall lasted only moments before they hit something solid, each of them landing with a thud. The air was thick, but cold, and they found themselves in an even darker chamber. "Report!" Maxine called out, pushing herself to her feet. The others groaned, disoriented, but they were alive. "We're alive," Moss gasped. "But we have no idea where we are now." Maxine took a deep breath, her mind racing. She couldn't shake the feeling that this was part of the test, that whatever waited ahead was about to push them beyond their limits. The structure was playing a game with them, manipulating them, testing them. But they would rise to the challenge. They had to. "Stay close," Maxine said. "We're not done yet." And so, they moved forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. They were no longer simply explorers. They were pawns in a game of cosmic proportions, and it would take everything they had to survive. And Maxine would not let them fail. The darkness that surrounded them was almost tangible. It clung to their skin and seeped into their minds, making every movement feel heavier, every breath more labored. Maxine led the crew forward, her every sense on high alert. The floor beneath them was uneven, the air thick with a strange, acrid scent that made her nose burn. The chamber they had fallen into was vast, the walls barely visible in the dim, pulsating light that came from deep within the structure. They had no idea where they were, only that they had to keep moving. Whatever test had been set for them was far from over. The voice, the entity, had made that clear. "Prove your worth," it had said. But Maxine had no idea what that even meant. What did it want from them? Why were they being subjected to this? "Everyone, stay together," she said, her voice low and steady. She could feel the weight of her crew's gazes on her, their uncertainty palpable. They were afraid, she was afraid, but there was no choice but to move forward. Behind her, Dr. Patel was scanning the area, her eyes flicking over the symbols on the walls. Maxine noticed the way Patel's brow furrowed with deep concentration, her fingers tracing the air in front of her like she was trying to decipher a code only she could see. "What is it, Ria?" Maxine asked. Patel didn't answer right away. Instead, she paused, staring at the wall before her, then back at the floor. "The symbols, they aren't just markings. They're instructions. A map of sorts. But it's not just leading us through the structure. It's guiding us towards something." "Something?" Moss asked, his voice shaking slightly. Patel nodded slowly, her expression grave. "Something specific. The heart of this ring isn't just some random place. It's designed for us, humans, to reach. It's meant to test us, yes, but in a very particular way. It's looking for something, an answer, maybe. Or a reaction." Maxine's stomach churned. "It's meant for us? For humanity? Why?" Her mind raced, but she couldn't allow herself to get distracted. They were already far too deep into the structure. "We'll find out soon enough," Maxine muttered. "Keep moving." The crew pressed on, deeper into the bowels of the structure. The further they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became. The walls seemed to narrow, the corridor winding in ways that defied logic. At times, they had to crouch, twisting their bodies to fit through spaces too narrow for comfort. The temperature dropped steadily, and the light grew dimmer, until they were forced to rely on the faint glow of their suit's illumination. It was then that Maxine saw it. At the far end of the corridor, just ahead, the space opened up into a large chamber. The air felt charged, and there, in the center of the room, stood an immense, glowing pedestal. The symbols on the pedestal were alive, swirling and shifting like they were made of liquid light. The hum of energy in the room was almost deafening now, vibrating through her chest and rattling her bones. "This is it," Patel said, her voice breathless. "The core of the ring. This is where everything converges." Maxine's gaze was fixed on the pedestal, her pulse quickening. She could sense that whatever was about to happen would be decisive. The entity that had been guiding them, testing them, was watching. Waiting. Slowly, she moved toward the pedestal, and her crew followed, though none of them said a word. Every footstep echoed in the vast chamber, the sound amplifying as they drew closer to the center. There was a palpable tension in the air, a feeling that this moment would change everything. When Maxine reached the pedestal, she hesitated for only a second before placing her hand on its surface. The symbols shifted beneath her fingers, lighting up in a cascade of colors, like a message being transmitted directly to her brain. Her vision blurred, and for a brief moment, she felt, something beyond the physical world. She saw alien worlds, swirling in the depths of space. She saw ancient civilizations rise and fall, their knowledge lost to the ravages of time. She saw the stars, distant and cold, each one a burning beacon of something that had come before. And she saw humanity, her species, standing at the threshold of the unknown, not as victims, but as conquerors. As survivors. The vision passed as quickly as it had come, leaving her breathless. A voice, the same voice that had haunted their every step, filled her mind once more, though this time it was different. There was no malice in it, no manipulation. It was calm, as if it were speaking to them from beyond the veil of time itself. "You have passed the test," the voice said, resonating deep within her consciousness. "You have proven your worth." Maxine felt a wave of confusion wash over her. What test? What worth? The voice continued, unrelenting. "You are human. You are a species of war and peace, destruction and creation. You are capable of greatness and ruin in equal measure. This ring is not just a relic, it is a judgment. The past civilizations that built it, they saw something in you. In humanity. A potential that others failed to see." Maxine's mind spun. Others? The voice was referring to something beyond the ancients, beyond the species that had created this structure. "You are the inheritors of the stars," the voice continued. "This ring has waited for the one species capable of understanding its true purpose. Your journey is not one of discovery, it is one of inheritance. What you do with this power is your choice. But you are the first to truly understand it." Suddenly, the pedestal hummed, and the glowing symbols morphed into something new. A doorway materialized beside it, a shimmering portal that beckoned them. But Maxine knew that crossing through that doorway wasn't simply about reaching a new destination. It was about claiming what was on the other side, about embracing their place in the universe. She turned to her crew, her heart racing. The weight of the decision was heavy in the air. They had come this far. There was no turning back. "Do we go through?" Moss asked, his voice uncertain but filled with awe. Maxine looked at each of them, one by one. They had fought through the unknown, navigated the impossible. This test, whatever it was, hadn't broken them. In fact, it had only made them stronger. Humans were not meant to cower before the unknown. They were meant to challenge it. To conquer it. "Yes," she said, her voice firm, unwavering. "We go through. We've earned it." The crew stood behind her, their resolve hardening. One by one, they stepped toward the doorway, each of them feeling the weight of the moment. The glowing portal hummed to life, and the chamber's energy shifted once more. It was as though the ring itself was waiting for them to make the final choice. Maxine stepped forward, leading the way. As she crossed the threshold, she felt an overwhelming surge of power, raw and untamed, yet filled with the potential for something greater. The stars, once distant and unreachable, were now within their grasp. Behind her, her crew followed. Together, they had proven that humanity was not just a species that stumbled through the stars, but one that would rise above the cosmos. It was their inheritance. Their destiny. The doorway closed behind them, sealing them within the ring. But Maxine knew, as they moved forward into the unknown, that they had already won. They were humanity. And the universe was theirs to conquer.